So let's, okay. Yeah. Let's pick up. I just wanted to wrap up. I wanted to wrap up this mitzvah of Gvura, the mitzvah of Gvura was Bezdin. We discussed all the issues, most of the issues last week. I'd like to just to finish up, one or two or three, a few issues over here, just we didn't take up. The Rambam says like this. Who adin mitzvah reish lamed aleph? Who adin b'shar mesim? There's a mitzvah not only by Haugi Bezdin but shar mesim. Kloima sheikover kol meis b'Yisrael b'yom moisei. So the Ram here in Sefer Mitzvas, the Mitzvahs Kvura, even by Shar Mesim, is the Yom HaMisa. B'yom Moisei. Ulchein Yikra. Now this is the main point. This is the main sentence over here. Ulchein Yikra Hameis she'ein loi mishis Aseh b'Kvurosoi. Kloima Hameis. Excuse me, Sheish Misasi B'Kvurosoi Meis Mitzvah. A Meis Mitzvah means that there's a mitzvah of Kvur on him. It's an amazing thing. Meis Mitzvah means that the mitzvah is Kvur. That's like something. When I saw that, I was struck. I never knew this before. Kloima Hameis Shemitzvah al kol Adam l'kover. So in Haugi Bezdin, the mitzvah is on Bezdin. On Kravim, the mitzvah is on the Kravim. But on a Meis Mitzvah, the mitzvah is anyone or everyone. So the Rambam is clear that Meis Mitzvah means that the mitzvah is Kvur. And even by Shar Mesim. The Ramban also interprets the Rambam in this fashion. The Ramban in Shirish Aleph, Ki Gvuras Mesim Bevadai Yesh Bo Mitzvah Aseh Ki Kovo Tikmurena Biyomo Hu V'zeh Mitzvah Aseh. And I'm skipping a little bit. Avol im ein shom krivim yeh meis mitzvah. Shemitzvahs aseh shelo doiche Pesach umila. The reason, the dechia of Pesach umila is the mitzvahs aseh of Kvur. I don't know. Shemitzvahs, I guess I'm doiche Shemitzvahs aseh shelo doiche Pesach umila. So it's like an Aseh is doiche an Aseh, and the mitzvah Kvur is doiche the Aseh of Pesach and Mila, even though it's Yesh Makoros. V'koyin Godol, v'nozir, v'echmiru bo yoseh mishar HaMitzvos. And it's this is a very strange lashon, and I'm not getting involved in it, just pointing out the problem. Echmiru bo yoseh mishar mitzvos sounds like a drabonon, but you can't be doiche a mitzvah deraisa because of the drabonon. Doesn't make any sense. So we don't know what he's saying exactly. Echmiru bo. So this is the Ram Shita, the Mishnah Torah. The Ramban just adds that this Meis Mitzvah is Doiche, Pesach, and Mila. Okay. Comes Mishnah Torah, and my impression is in Mishnah Torah he has a different approach. If we recall last week, it was unclear in Rambam to say the best or the least, whichever way you want to say it, that there is a mitzvah kvura in Shal Mason. Made Mitzvah Kavua is only in Haugi Bezin. We were talking, the Ram says some sentences which are a little bit odd, but he never says expuish. There's a Mitzvah Aseh of Kavua on Shakloib. But certainly, Mes Mitzvah, he interprets in a different way. And this I want to contrast because the Rambam in Mishnah Torah, in Sefer Mitzvos, a mitzvah over here, says Mes Mitzvah means a mace that everyone is obligated to perform the Mitzvah Kavua on. So it's a mace that's homemade for the Mitzvah Kavua. The Rambam in Hilchos Ovel, in Per Gimel Ches, Koyin shepoga b'meis mitzvah b'derech, harizeh mistamei lo. Afilu koyin godol muchuyev l'stamei lo l'kovlo. So everyone has to be mitame, as the koyin godol, in order to be koiva the meis. V'dov zeh halocha mipi hakabol. So he says the tumah of Mes Mitzvah is halocha mipi hakabol. In Uchos Naziris, he also says that it's a kabbalah. In Perek Zayin, halocha yud beis. The truth is, the pasuk in the Torah is referring to Naziris lachoisai. That's by the Pasha of Nozir. That's what we learn out the heta of Mes Mitzvah. The Rambam in Hilchos Klayim in Perek Yud halacha Chof Tes says we learn there. He says explicitly we learn the din of Mes Mitzvah from the Gzeirus L'Kosel Lachoisai. Shekover Abriyos Doich Elav Shel Tumas Koyin. The L'cheira that Kover Abriyos is Doich. This whole issue L'cheira is not it's nothing to do with the kiyum of kfuas mess, but we're talking about the kiyum of Kover Abriyos, because the Ram says there in Perek Yud of Klaim she Kover Abriyos Doich Elav Shel Tumas Koyin. Here, so there's no remez in Mishnah Torah that there is a mitzvah kavua in Meis Mitzvah, and could be a separate Kabbalah to be metame to the mace. And in fact, the Osameach goes further, and he claims that the heter, or the mitzvah of kohen listame, is not because of the mitzvah kavua, but it's covered a breeze even if there be no kavua. And it brings a raya from the Ram in Hilchos Ovel Perek Gimel Yud, shemistamel l'nosi l'chvoidai, even though the nosi has koivim. So it's a raya doch that the tumor, the tumor of Mes Mitzvah has nothing to do with kavua. But the Ram here in Minyan Mitzvahs ties up Mes Mitzvah with kavua very clearly. So l'cheira, according to the Rambam, in Minyan Mitzvahs, the heter of Tuma and the Mitzvahs Kavua go hand in hand, and the Mitzvahs Kavua Mes Mitzvah. That is point number one. I thought this very interesting that the Ram touches up a word in Minyan Mitzvahs, and the word means X, and then he says in Mishnah Torah, he backs off of it 180 degrees. Now, just one more point here. And then move on to the next thing. The Rambam in Perek Yudalev, it was over Aleph, says Mitzvas Aseh shel Divreim Levaka Cholim Lenachem Avelim Lohitzi Ameis Ulachnis Akal Lavas Ochim Usasim Chol Tzok Akvur Lo say L'sasei B'chol Tzok Akvur Lo say Sal Kotev V'leilach Lefonav V'lispoid V'lachpo V'likpo. And he says the mitzvah say midivreim. So all these things, including kvura, is only the rabbanon. So whatever you're going to say, the Ram seems to say in Perek Yud Ovel that it's a deraisa. When he says al tikbareni, is yichayev lekbo. Shekfu mitzvah, he says. So what the simplest saying is that the kvura in Perek Yud Beis is talking about kvuras kalka. The Maisa kvura. In Perek Yud Daled, he's not talking about the Maisa kvura. He's talking about, as he says, lis asik b'chol tzok akvura ulohitzi es ameis. It's the shtatvus and the kvuras ameis, and that's a drabonon. That's b'chal mitzvah after lachkumud. So that's, I think, very good. And that's the Rambam in Perek Yud, the steer between Perek Yud Beis V'chos Ovel and Perek Yud Daled V'chos Ovel. There's no steer because Kvura, the Maisa, the that's the deraisa, but this askus is only the Rabbon. The mitzvah deraisa is kvuras kalka. His askus b'kvura is the Rabbon and b'chlal ve'after achakamut. That's what I would say. Okay, now next. Let's now, I'm going to just random, I'm sorry, I just happened to, this was the way it came out. I wanted it, I just wanted to go over some things in Mitzvah Vav, because I found things amazing, okay? Ba Mitzvah Shishis, Hatzivui Hi, Shetzivonu, which is in Amal, Lihidobek Im HaChachom. The mitzvah is to be in Ibn Eoiv, Bechevras, Shetzivonu, Bechevras Im HaChachomim. And in Kapach, it's Liskarev Im HaChachom. Okay, Beseder. Ul His Yached, he's, see, before, it's in Ibn Eob, it's Bechevras Chacham. Ul His Yached, there's the Vahi Dobek. And in Kapach, Ul His Chaber, Im Mohem, Ul Hasmid B'Yeshivosam. Ulishtatef imohem b'chol oifen bi'ofenei hachevra. Any social interaction, you should be there with the chacham. Ulihis asek ulishtatef imohem b'chol oifen bi'ofenei hachevra. Or in Ibn Eob or Eruv, or Iskalvus, it's all the same things to be around them. And what are the social the social ports for interaction with the Chacham? It's not talking about this, it's talking about the way people interact on a social level. And the way they duly interact is machol, you eat together, you drink together, ube'asek, whatever asek is. Asek is Ibn Tiban and Ibn Yoib, and in Kapach, it's either Mekhu Memko Asokim. It's still business, which is a very interesting business, is a way of social interaction, I guess. I don't know. Now, and he says, Kedei Shiagia Lonu Lihidomois B'Maaseim Ulahamin, that we should be close. We learn from him to be, we should learn to imitate their ways and to believe the Deos Hamitios. Okay? So one could ask, I'm not sure if it's a great kasha or not, and I think the answer is obvious, but let's ask it as a kasha. So the question is, should you look at the this kedei shiagia lonu bezer lidomois b'maseim, is that ki'ilu? What it says is the tachlis, the tachlis of the mitzvah is kedei lu b'maseim. And as the Ram says in Hilchos Deis, in Perek Zayin Halacha Beis, Mitzvah say lidobek b'chachomim v'salmideihem k'dei lilmoid mima'aseihem ki inyan shenema u'boi sidbok. So once you say that, maybe you should say this whole thing of lidobek im achachomim u'lisyachir imohem ulahasmid b'yeshivasom. Maybe that is really not part of the mitzvah. The mitzvah is to luma mimaseim, and it's only akdom. And the Ram says, when you define mitzvahs, the hakdom is set to cherish yud. The akdom is really not part of the mitzvah. And here the other Abba, the Ram cans this as the mitzvah, not as akdom to the mitzvah. So even though the tachlis of the mitzvah is Dovak HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but the Maisa mitzvah, it's not an Hagdoma. This is the Maisa mitzvah, which will cause it Dovak HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Maisa mitzvah is Askas im Tamar Chachomim, and has nothing to do with Sherish Asiri. Okay. Now, let's go over this. The Ram says an amazing thing over here. The Ram says, and we'll see that it's a big chiddush. And he says, Kedei she'agia, Kedei she'agia lonu b'zeh lidomus b'maseim l'amar adeis hamitios midivreim. Hu amar yis'aleh u'boi sidbok. So there's a mitzvah u'boi sidbok. And that's what he's saying. There's a mitzvah, is called boi sidbok. And the truth is, frankly, that's a big chiddush. Because I'm just going to go through and, maybe there's no such mitzvah. Excuse me. I don't know. You might think that's kvira, but let's, say, maybe there's no such mitzvah. Who says the mitzvah boy tidbuk? So, for example, the Gemara Ksuvas on Kufir Aleph from the base, Kiyetzi bedovo atoimer li'avo es Hashem Elokecha u'ledovka boy, to love God and to be dovak boy. So the Gemara asks, like the honest question, we'll talk about the question itself later. V'chi efsha la'odom lihidobek b'shchina. Is it possible for man to cling on to God? Elo kol hamesi bito letalmud chacham v'chulei ma alo v'kosu ki'ilu medabek b'shchina. So ki'ilu medabek b'shchina, it's as if he's medabek b'shchina. It's not that he is medabek b'shchina. So the lashon ki'ilu l'chayre is not ki'ilu as a mitzvah medabek b'shchina. It's a ma'ila. That if you medabek chacham, you have a ma'ila ki'ilu in the b'shchina. But you don't get the impression from the reading of the mashmos, the lashon of the Gemara, that there's a mitzvah over here. And Bifrat, the Gemara does an amazing thing, because the Gemara quotes originally a posuk v'atem hadvekim b'Hashem Elokeichem chayin kulchem hayoyim, and lo yitzich efshel lebok b'shchina v'aloi HaKadosh Baruch Hu eish ochlo elo kol hadovek imesi bito l'talva is ki'ilu medabek b'shchina. So the Gemara is equating so it's not a kavanah mitzvah. There's no mitzvah. It's crazy. Listen to the lashon of the Gemara. Amalei Rebbe Mitzvas and takonim min haTorah. V'atem advekim b'Hashem Elokeichem chayin kulchem hayoyim v'chi efshar lidbukei b'shchina v'oksiv ki Hashem Elokecha eish oichla el kol hamasi bitoi l'talmud chacham v'chulei ma'ala v'kosav ki'ilu b'dab b'shchina. And then the Gemara says ki yotzi b'dov hazeh atoimer v'avo Hashem Elokecha u'ladovka boy. So it's bol hashvois, the dovka boy to v'atem advekim. So l'chayra, it's not the kavan of the Gemara to say there's no HaMitzvos over here. Interesting thing is, at the end of this mitzvah, the Rambam quotes this Gemara as a raya, and it is a mitzvah. At the end, Omru, the last line, v'chi efshar lo li'adam lidog b'shchina v'ksiv ki Hashem Elokecha eish ochla el kol ha'neisei bo bas talmud chacham v'chulei. Okay? Okay? So this is amazing. So you never, the rayis, it's very, what's the big deal over? You don't know anything. There is a Gemara brachos. Lamadal and Rebeis is an im yuchad to be divat and chamlich achomim. Omer Abchia, Abba Rabba, Omer Abyechanon, Kol Nevim, Kulan and Stabu, El Masi, Bitol, Talmud Chochem, Loisa Pragmatic, Talmud Chachomim, Ul Mahanim, Talmud Chochem, and the Chosa, V'chulei. So the mashmos is that there's some inyan, but it doesn't seem to be a mitzvah. And we'll see later that the Sifri that the Ram quotes is also questionable. In fact, comes of Sadigoin and does not count Uboy Tidbuk in Minyan HaMitzvos. But Yuchim Perlau in Esin, Aseh, Kuf Sadites, Reish, quotes one of the questions, but it's a pack of questions. The L'chora, Atana the Messiah of Sadigoin. So I would like to suggest that even though one could have claimed, well, a Dovka boy is not a mitzvah, but maybe the Rambam is learning from what he interprets as Pshuto Shel Mikra that there is a mitzvah. If you recall, I pointed out that the Rambam in Minyan HaMitzvos, in Mitzvah Dalid, Hey, Vov, and Zayin, uses the pasuk as the Seidah Dvorim. There's a pasuk, Es Hashem Elokecha Tiro, Oisei Sa'avoid, Es Hashem Elokecha is Mitzvah Yira, Oisei Sa'avoid is Avoida, which is Trila, Uboy Sidbok is Vav, in the Mitzvah Liba, and Uvishmo Tishaveya, the Mitzvah Shvu B'Shem. So in Dvorim Yud, pasuk Chaf is one thing, A, B, C, D, and it's all one mitzvah after the next. And that's mitzvah Daled to mitzvah Zayin. The Rambam brings this mitzvah. I said before, it's an amal. It's a mitzvah gilo. It's not a shrano. And he adds, and he says clearly that there's a chiyuv over here. It's not just tam a kiyuv, there's a chiyuv. Because as you go through and read the Ram over here, he says, V'chein heviu raya al chiyuv al chiyuv ha'adam lisa es bas talmud chacham. So it's a chiyuv. It's very clear in Rambam in Minyan HaMitzvos over here that it's a chiyuv. And he's basing it on the Sifri. Ubo hapirish ledovka idobek b'chachomim b'talmideim. V'zeh loshoin Sifri. He's quoted the Sifri, kilu a pirush makubal, that because Stam Sifri is a pirush makubal, and that's what he says. Ubo hapirush, that there's a Kabbalah that this is shot in the pasuk. He dober b'chachom b'talmideim. There's a mitzvah. However, The end of the Sefer is he doesn't quote, and it's a problem. Because listen to the Lashon of the Sefer. El hidobek b'chachomim b'talmideim. Umale ani olecho ki'ilu olisa lamorim v'notalto. V'loi shalisa v'notalto b'sholom. Elo ki'ilu asisa milchomo v'notalto. V'cheinu oimer olisa lamorim shavis shevi. So if the thrust of the Sefer is to tell you a mitzvah, the discussion is a very strange discussion. Okay. Now, let's now next issue. Okay, let's just go on. So the question is, so what we've done is clearly the Rambam learns there's a mitzvah here, and Rav Sadi going there isn't. The Talmudic evidence and the Sifri Lefumrieta don't point in the Rambam's direction. If you accept the Rambam's premises in interpreting the pasuk that there's one mitzvah after the next, Sira, Tavoid, Boisidbok, Bishmot Tishaveya, so then maybe in the parallel structure of the pasuk, you might say there's a mitzvah, but say that. What is the mitzvah? As we said before, the mitzvah is liskaber, lehischaber, im talmid chachomim, b'chol tzura shel chibur. To sit between the talmid chachomim and to do with them all actions which somebody normally does in social interaction, like achila, shisiya, asek, which is mekhumemka, and to get married. Okay. Next. See, the next step now is going to be very interesting. The mashmos hadvorim is that every single person, and I'll show you where I get this from, every single person has to get married to a bas talmid chacham. Because l'cheira, let's say, even before we get to that point, each one is obligated. It's not this one or this one. Each one is obligated to do all of them. Lidobek im chachomim, ulisyachid imoim, ulahashmi shivosam, ulishtate vimoim, b'chol oifan me'ofanei achevra, b'machal mishal b'eisek. So it means you do everything. This, and Ram said, if you remember, and how do you know this? Because the Ram says, "V'chein heviu raya al chiyuv ha'adam." Right? And what a chiyuv ha'adam do what? Lisa bas talmid chacham. So means there's an obligation to marry a bas talmid chacham. That's the mitzvah. So I guess this is one of the things I want to explore with you. Does it mean that everyone who doesn't marry a Talmud Chacham is Mavatal Mitzvah Aseh? Because the Chiyuv, you're setting up a situation where, I don't know, a lot of people won't get married. I don't know, it's not, what can I tell you? So this, I think, is a very interesting issue. Because the Ram really, he said explicitly, you can ask about, whether it's every single one, or, but the Ram is very clear, so it's very clear in the Rambam that there's an obligation to marry a Bas Talmud Chacham. Now, the question is, but you're coming to a point where it's an impossible. You're setting up a demographic issue that, you say there's a mitzvah to marry the Bas Talmud Chacham, and it means that, a large part of the population won't be able to get married. Okay? What I wanted to suggest is probably the Ram seems to be focusing on this issue. Because the Ram says the chiyuv of this mitzvah is lehishtadel. If you look at Hilchos Deis in Perek Vov, Halacha Beis, Elakach Omru Chachomim beferish mitzvah zo. Hidobek b'Chachomim b'Talmideim. Okay, so the Ram is explaining the mitzvah, correct? And then he says, Lefikoch tzorich odom lehishtadel sheyisa bas Talmud Chacham. It's an interesting nusach in here in Sefer HaMitzvos and HaMitzvos. He says the chiyuv, and there he says in Mishnah Torah lishtadel sheyisa bas Talmud Chacham. Just one second. So the question is, well, what does it mean, lishtadil? So I want to suggest 3 pshatim, and frankly, I have no clue of which way to go. Okay, now the first pshat. The first part is lishtadel, is there's no bona fide chiyuv, it's just the kiyum. Yes, should try his best, but it's not a chiyuv. And then it's not like he's saying over here in Minyan HaMitzvos. And you have in Mishnah Torah the Lashon lishtadel that it's just the kiyum. It's not a chiyuv. Ram in Hilchos Tefillin in Perek Daled, Halacha Chaf Hey, Kedushas Tefillin, Kedushason Gedolehi. Lefikoch tzorich odom lehishtadel liyoson olov kol hayoim. Shem mitzvos and kachi. So l'cheira, there I would assume there's no chiyuv, it's just a kiyum. It's a kiyum mitzvah b'shleimus. So is that what the Ram means in Mishnah Torah? By the shtadlus to marry a Bas Talmud Chacham, because marrying a Bas Talmud Chacham, there's the kiyum mitzvah b'shleimus, but it's not a chiyuv. Now, Okay. Let's now take two other approaches. And I'm going to explain to you what they are. It is a chiyuv, but the question is, what's happening if you say it's a chiyuv? And that I'd like to explain to you. So the person is being mishtadel, okay? All he's doing mishtadel, since demographically it's very difficult, not everyone's going to be successful. Maybe the kavanah is that even if he's not masig his matorah, he's not successful, and he's not mekayim the mitzvah, because sof he's not nidbak l'chacham, but there's no bittul aseh. The bittul aseh or boy sidbok is only if he's not mishtadel. We call koichay lisa bas talmud chacham. But he's mishtadel, not successful. There's no bittul aseh. That's a chiddush. Maybe that's the pshat. Or another option. I'm not saying the three options. I don't know which one to take. Is the mitzvah itself is only do the shtadlus. And if he does the shtadlus, and also be other, he's also mekayim the mitzvah. And that l'chera is the mashmos of the Divrei Rambam in Mishnah Torah there, because he says lefikoch. He says lefikoch. He says el kacham racham beferish mitzazu hidaber chacham mitamideim. So what's lefikoch? So Adam lishtadil she's bas talmud chacham. So this is defining what the mitzvah is, and the mitzvah itself is lishtadil. It reads very well on the Rambam, but the problem is it's very difficult to say that's the pshat, because since the mitzvah is lischaber luma maseim, the person makes a shtadlus, and lo also be other, lo also be tzurasei. He didn't do. He's lamaisa. He's not, honest love command of it. He's not sitting with a chacham and learning with it. So this maybe fits in very well to the lashon Rambam, but it's very difficult to swallow, because conceptually it doesn't make any sense. How could it be such a thing? Now, let's go back. There's something very odd going on. If you remember the Lashon Gemara Ksuvos, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Eish Oichla. It's impossible to be David. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Eish Oichla. This question, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Eish Oichla, is very difficult, because it's mashma that if the Rebbeinu Shem wouldn't have been very hot, you wouldn't have had a problem. Mekayim the mitzvah. But the problem is not because God is very hot. The problem is because God is not corporeal, and you can't hold on to him. Ein lo guf, ein lo masigi guf. So I would have said that the talk about nidbak and HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Eino Guf, Eino Masigi Guf. So the whole lashon of nidbak is Dibur Torah lashon b'nei Adam. And the Ram Mishnah Torah doesn't quote this Eish Oichla. And whether he quotes it in Sefer Mitzvah or not, we'll see. It really depends. 1 second. Oh, no, but he does. Sorry. Here would have been. He quotes over here. He says, "Eish ocho." וכי אפשר לו לעוד לדור בשכינה והכסיב כי השם אלוקיך איש אויכו. So I thought, in fact, I thought that that's why the Targum in this pasuk says uboy sidbok uledachalte tiskarev. So it's dachalte tiskarev. Dachalte is a reference to uboy l'shalom. You can find other places like that, and because you're not talking about God as you can't be miskarev to the uboy l'shalom. So you mention the uboy l'shalom in a very vague reference, because it's a problem of the anthropomorphic reference is called that the uboy l'shalom is corporeal, and that's what the uncles is bothered by. So if you would have asked me, it certainly is Turk. Dibur Turk Elohim is not talking about dovik or anything. It means to be. It means in your machshava to be close to God, to think about God, to be involved with God. And it's amazing what Chazal did. They turned around. It really means to cling. So the way to do it is to be. It's amazing, amazing shot. Okay. Now, another question. Since we're postulating that there's a mitzvah, lidobik b'chachomim, it's a mitzvah say, why does the Gemara Pesachim work so hard at Mem Testament Aleph, Mem Testament Base to give other timing to be Lisa Bas Talmud Chacham? The Gemara Mem Testament Aleph, Tono Abonon, Le'olam Yimko Odom Kol Mashiesh Loi, V'Yisa Bas Talmud Chacham, Shemeisel Goyle Muftach Loi, Shebona Talmud Chachamim, V'Al Yisa Bas Amoritz, Shemeisel Goyle Bona V'Amoritz. And on the base, Tanya, Oire Me Oime, Kol Amesi Bito Li'Amoritz, Kilu Kevsa Umenicha Lefinei Ari. Ma Ari Doris V'Oichel, Ve'ela Boishes, Af Amoritz Maki Uboil Ve'ela Boishes. If you say boy typical is only kiyum, so the Gemara gives other reasons to ask to do it. But if it's basically a mitzvah, a mitzvah, a chiyuv, so what do you need other reasons for? So you could say maybe a mitzvah is only chayiv at chomish, and here it's called hoinai. So it's not because of the mitzvah. Even without the mitzvah, you should do it. So that's in terms. I remember of Alpert Zechon with him. The child will be a bas Talmud Chacham. Your child will be bas. If you die, your child will be a Talmud Chacham. And the other Makul Boyer is an Isui be a problem. The Ram quotes all the members in the Gemara Pesachim in Uchos Isui Bia in Perchaf Aleph Halach Lamed Beis. Okay. Okay. Now, here I want to show you something else that's interesting. Okay. A priori, there's a difference between the Rambam in Minyan HaMitzvos and in Mishnah Torah. Because the Rambam here says, when he says the mitzvah, Omer Yis'aleh Ubay Sidbot, Ukvar Nichpa, Zeh HaTzivui Gamkein, V'Omer Ledovka Boy. So what happens over here? That there's a kefil mitzvah. The Ubay Sidbot or Ledovka Boy are the exact same thing, and it says it twice. And why does it say it twice? In order for Chaymer Ha'inyan, as the Rambam says in Shiur. Interesting. In Hilchos Deis, in Perek Vov, the Rambam says, Mitzvah seil dober chachamim aloch beis kedilum masayim shenemu by sidbot v'chiyefshel lo'od lidot b'shchina kachom chom feish mitzazu idober chom tzakhem lefikoch tzorem v'shtadel shisa bas tamid chomim v'yasibitl tamid chom v'lechol v'ishtois im tamid chomim v'leasas k'mokratia tamid chomim v'lischaber lohen b'chol minei chibo shenema l'dovka boy. So a priori, you don't get the impression in the Ram Ledovka boy is kefel in the way we understand it, but it's mal b'kol meni chibo. It's like kefel in order to learn to mechadish something new. In here, in Sefer HaMitzvos, he seems to say that it's a kefel for chaymayin, it's a partial kefel. And the truth is, the Ram over here, the Shitosai, it does exactly what he should do. Because he quotes even at the beginning, before he quotes Ledovka boy, Ulahasbir b'yeshivos l'shtate b'moim b'chol oifen be'ofen ha'chevra. And that you can also learn from a boy sidbot. So the Ram is very strange in Mishnah Torah and Sefer HaMitzvos. What's the interrelation? What's the relationship between a boy sidbot and Ledovka boy? Remember, the Ram Chi has three types of kefo. There's a kefo for chumrah. There's a kefo to be moisif a new inyan, a new thing, and then new inyan, a new something else, a new aspect to the mitzvah, which maybe that's what's happening over here. Or there's a meino inyan. If you remember, it's a whole larichas and church chi. It might be, it's an interesting thing, I'll tell you. You should look at this as beyond what I want to talk about now, but if you look in the Eben Ezra, in the Dvorim Yud Aleph Chav Beis, you get the impression in the Pshuta Shomikla, there's no mitzvah here at all, but it's an Eitzah, Eich Yoshim Eretz Yisrael. Now, logically, there are two ways to do this. Because you remember, he says a bar perish, l'chayetz pirush makubal. But if you start saying v'chi efsha the dabek b'shchina v'aloeish ochla, it's kilological proof that logically you can't interpret the pasuk any other way, so that becomes shot in pasuk. It's a whole different approach, where it's a pirush makubal or it's a logical influence. There's no other way to interpret it. How can be davar kodesh baruch is like eish ochla? So maybe it must be davar chom b'tamidei. The end over here I'm not sure what the relevance or the interest is. Omu v'chi efshel la'odam lidobek b'shchina v'ksiv k'Hashem elokecha eish ochlo elokol noisi bas Talmud Chacham, and then it says v'chule v'goyim. That you'll find in the Ksav Yad Kapach, Ksav Yad Bloch, and even Eoy. The only source that you find that quotes the whole Gemara here, the Ram quotes the whole Gemara, is in Ibn Tibet. Whatever that's worth, whatever the issue is. Okay, Chanukah and Matzlocha.